Saturday's full moon in Libra is all about one of our favorite topics, relationships, and either the balance or lack thereof that we have in them. Things are going to get intense though, because we're going to be pushed out of our comfort zones in order to make real and lasting changes. In this video, I'm going to discuss the astrology behind the full moon, break it down by sign, and then pull some tarot cards. So stay tuned. You definitely don't want to miss this. What's up, everybody? It's your girl Mel of Divine Feminine Works, and as always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. This channel is everything tarot, astrology, spirituality, and manifestation. So if those are the things you like, if those are the things you love, if those are the things you want to learn more about, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell so you'll always be notified when I come out with new content. And speaking of content, head over to Instagram and hit that follow button. I've got loads of daily content, and I go live every Thursday night at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, where I do live tarot readings by sign. All right, so head over there, hit that follow button so you don't miss any of that great stuff. All right, so happy full moon in Libra. This one is definitely one for the books, okay? Because of course it covers one of our favorite topics, relationships. I feel like of all the things that people want to know about in astrology, it's always having to do with relationships. And this full moon is going to show us a lot about the relationships in our lives. But most importantly, it's going to show us a lot about ourselves and how we show up in relationships. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the astrology. So let's take a look at the chart and see what we have. So first, we have the moon at 26 degrees Libra, which is opposite the sun at 26 degrees Aries. Then we have both the sun and the moon are going to be square to Pluto in Capricorn, which is at 28 degrees Capricorn. Next, we have the moon again at 26 degrees Libra, which is going to be trine to Saturn at 23 degrees Aquarius. It's also going to be trine to Mars at 1 degree Pisces. Okay, so we've got quite a bit going on with the astrology, but again, just going to break it down so I can explain it a bit better. And speaking of explaining, if you're new to astrology or if you've been studying for a while and are really trying to get your footing, a lot of this terminology can be confusing, right? I've got trines, I've got squares, oppositions, and all of these things. I know when I first started studying astrology, I was like, what is this? Like, I felt like I was back in school in a subject like math that I wasn't too fond of. But yeah, so in an effort to help you guys with the astrology, what I've done is I've created an astrology basics cheat sheet that will give you all the information and the basics you need to know in order to start learning astrology. So as you can see, it discusses the planets, the houses, the signs, and the aspects. And it gives you everything you need to know. What the houses mean, the different symbols, the dates and the meanings of the signs, and a quick synopsis of the aspects, okay? So if you're interested and would love to learn more, hit the link in the description box down below where you can download this astrology basics cheat sheet and get your astrological life together, all right? So let's take everything step by step and see what this is all about. So first, we have the moon in Libra is going to be opposite the sun in Aries. And this is the essence of a full moon. It's when the sun and the moon are opposite. The moon is the brightest it could be in the sky, and it illuminates everything that has been hidden, or it signifies the completion of things, okay? So if we're talking about Libra, we are talking about relationships because Libra is the relationship sign. Now, oppositions are about extremes. It's about one or the other. And usually you feel like you're being pulled in two different directions. And in this case, you've got Libra, which represents we on the one hand, and Aries, which represents me on the other. So it's me versus we. If I had to sum up what this full moon is about, that would be it. Me versus we, okay? And so on the one hand, you have your own desires, you have your own wants and your own needs that are sort of in opposition to the needs and responsibilities of your relationship, okay? And things may be out of whack, and that's not for everyone. I feel like some people may have some sort of a healthy balance, but if you have any imbalances in your relationships, this full moon is going to show you exactly where those are, okay? Finding a healthy balance between me and we is going to be the key to this full moon, okay? It's all about equity. It's all about reciprocity also. So let me give you a perfect example. Let's say you have a friendship, right? And you are constantly depending on your friends. Like you can't do anything without them. You always want to hang out. You never want to be alone. This full moon is going to show you how unbalanced that friendship really is. It may spark a fight between you and your friends when your friend tells you, yo, I need space. Don't you have anything to do by yourself? Why are you always like clinging? And why are you always like around? Like, don't you know how to be by yourself? And you're gonna be like, wow, like, am I really codependent? Have I been relying on my friends for all of my emotional satisfaction? Have I been neglecting myself? It's exactly how this full moon is going to play out. But again, it all depends on where it's going down in your chart, because this could affect your friendships, your family members. This could affect your relationship with your children, with a romantic partner, with a spouse. It really depends where it's going down in your chart, okay? But that's basically the gist of the sun opposite the moon, right? In Aries and Libra. Okay, so next up is the major player, Pluto. So both the sun and the moon are going to be square to Pluto, and squares represent a somewhat harsh aspect. It brings tension and frustration. So this is what I was just this is what I was just talking about before. So like I said in my example, let's say you or your friend are really clingy, right? The presence of Pluto in this whole mix is probably going to spark a fight. It's probably going to spark some sort of argument or discussion, or just an event that's going to evoke a lot of intense emotion around this particular subject. So it might be, like I said, it might be a fight. It might be an argument. Some external circumstance may happen that's going to highlight the fact that you or your friend are codependent and don't know how to be by yourself. Okay. But the thing is, with the presence of Pluto, it's going to bring up a lot of repressed emotions. So going back to my example, perhaps you feel, or perhaps you act in a codependent way because maybe in your childhood or something, you were abandoned, or you felt abandoned, or you felt like your needs weren't being met. So in order to compensate for that, or even overcompensate for that, you feel like you have to be clingy and you have to be on all the time. You understand what I mean? So I feel like that's sort of how this is going to come about, okay? When we're talking about the moon in particular, we're talking about emotions, especially deeply seated emotions. Pluto is a planet of transformation. It's also a planet of endings and beginnings. And this isn't necessarily to say that your relationship is going to end, although for some that may be the case. But for most people, I feel like this is going to mark a transition period in your relationship. I feel like when everything is said and done, your relationship is going to be in a very different place than it was before. I feel like many of you are going to be emotionally triggered. And in doing so, you're going to be able to address these things head on, which is going to have a direct impact on your relationship. So again, going back to my example, if you can realize why you feel like you're codependent, or, you know, if your friend can realize why they're being codependent, and you can change that, that obviously is going to change the relationship for the better. So there's a certain amount of self-awareness that this full moon is requiring of us, which is why we're being pushed out of our comfort zone. Because obviously self-awareness can be, especially if we're talking about Pluto and emotional wounds and traumas, being aware of those things can be very uncomfortable, right? You don't want to address some of these things. That's why some of these things are repressed, because you've sort of stuffed them down in an effort to not deal with them. But in doing so, like I said before, you're really going to be able to change yourself and your relationships. And the one thing to remember with this, the most important thing to remember, is that it's not about changing the other person. It's about changing yourself. And in changing yourself, that's how you change the relationship. And this full moon is giving you that perfect opportunity to do so. Also, with the sun square Pluto, this gives us the opportunity to get rid of some of those bad habits that are preventing us from having successful relationships, okay? It may not even be something as dramatic or as serious as like emotional trauma or some sort of like deep psychological issue. For some, it just may literally be bad habits in relationships that aren't allowing you to have the best relationship possible. But again, you're going to be able to be cognizant of these things. Now, just because you're cognizant of them doesn't mean that you can actually change them. Like, you have to make the effort to do so. And again, that is why you're being pushed out of your comfort zone in order to make those changes and see those changes reflected back to you in your relationships, okay? So like I said, that square to Pluto is pretty harsh. It provides frustration and tension. But thankfully, the trine between the moon and Mars and the moon and Saturn are going to sort of soften the blow. It's sort of going to give us some extra positive energy in a sense. Okay. So with the moon trine Mars, it's going to allow us to be excited about our desires. This is really important for some because if you've been neglecting yourself in relationships, the presence of the moon trine Mars is going to sort of like signal back to you what you need and be excited about it. Okay. So let's say, again, using my example, if you or your friend have been codependent, I feel like at the time of the full moon, you're going to be passionate about something that's very personal to you. And that's going to like almost like ping you, be like, oh yeah, you know, I really love doing this, but I haven't been doing this because I've been wrapped up in this relationship, or I've been all up under my friend or my man or my girl or whoever. I really like doing this. Let me get back to doing this. And you're going to feel excited about it. That's going to help establish equilibrium in the relationship, if that makes sense. Like, you're going to be like, oh, I forgot about me. I forgot about what I like. This is what I like. And then that's going to sort of like take the pressure away from like being all in the relationship and sort of shift it back to you addressing you and your needs. Okay. And the presence of Saturn, the moon trine Saturn, is going to provide a certain stability of emotions. It's going to stabilize everyone's emotions. So everyone, even though everyone's going to be feeling emotionally sensitive, it's not going to be as bad as it could because that trine between the moon and Saturn is sort of going to equalize everything out and provide a little bit of tranquility as well. So even though it's going to be emotionally charged, it's not going to be as bad as it could be, okay? Which is really important. Because when we're talking about Pluto, we're also talking about power struggles. And when you're talking about relationships, if you have any imbalance, particularly as it relates to control and power, those type of arguments and situations can get really heated really fast. And the presence of the moon and Saturn and Mars all being trine to one another, it's going to soften the blow with that. It's going to allow you to calm down a bit, and it's going to allow you to remember what makes you happy, what your desires are, and be excited about pursuing them, okay? So all in all, if I had to sum up this full moon in one sentence, it would be the best way to change your relationship is to change yourself. Be cognizant of how you show up in relationships. And in doing so and addressing those wounds, those bad habits, that trauma that may be preventing you from having a successful relationship, you're going to see that that change reflected to you in the person that you are relating to. So a lot can be done in terms of personal development and development within your relationship. So this is a really important full moon this month, okay? And I feel like for those who do the work, for those who are really dedicated to transformation, particularly positive transformation, I feel like this can set the stage for relationship mobility, upward mobility in relationships in the very near future. So my advice is definitely do the work. Whatever comes up, don't ignore it. process whatever comes up and try to see things not only from your own vantage point, but from the vantage point of the person to whom you're relating. I feel like that's going to give you that self-awareness. It's going to add to the self-awareness that's really important in making those changes. Okay, so now let's break it down by sign and see what each sign can expect for this full moon. All right, so you know the deal. These are done by rising sign. And if you don't know what your rising sign is, you'll want to go to a site like astro.com, put in your birth time, date, and location, and it'll generate your natal chart. Your natal chart will have this symbol that says AS or ASC. That is your ascendant or your rising sign. All right. And if you need any assistance with your natal chart, or you would like to order a natal chart report from me, link is in the description box below. All right. So of course, we start at the beginning and we start with Aries. Okay. So I'll do a little bit of the astrology, and then I'm going to pull a card for each sign using one of my favorite decks, the Queen of the Moon Oracle. I love using this deck for my moon series videos. So yeah, it always gives great messages. All right, so Aries. So for you, Aries, this full moon in Libra is going down in your 7th house of relationships. So you and Libra are the two signs that are really going to have a lot of activity in your traditional relationship sector, right? These are your commitments. These are your marriages. These are your long-term relationships. It also covers business partnerships, anything that you bind yourself to. So let's say you have a contract with someone that would be covered under the 7th house. Okay. So those are the type of relationships that this full moon is going to address. All right. So for you, it's all about really me versus we. The moon is going to be shining in your 7th house of relationships. So there's going to be a focus on the relationship. So have you been neglecting yourself for your partners or your commitments? Or have you been really selfish and not been keeping up with your responsibilities and your obligations to your partner? This full moon is going to show you all of that and more. It's also going to bring up some emotions that you may have concerning relationships, things like abandonment, codependency, all of those wonderful emotional traumas that many of us have stuffed under the rug. Those are going to come up. But when everything is said and done, Aries, this is all about having a healthy balance and seeking change within yourself so that you and your committed partners see eye to eye. If you do the work, that's exactly what's going to happen. All right. So let's get a card for you and see what's going on. This is for Aries rising for the full moon in Libra. Okay. Oh, okay. We've got release. Hopefully you can see that, right? And this is a 27, which is reduces to a 9. Okay. So for some of you, there may be either you may be letting go of a relationship or a relationship may be ending, but it also may be with respect to a part of the relationship or a part of you. Let me explain. So remember I said before that the Sun square Pluto is going to allow us to eradicate bad habits that are preventing us from having successful relationships. And I feel like for you, Aries, this is particularly important. I feel like for some, actually, for a majority of you, it's about getting rid of those bad habits. Now, naturally, you guys tend to be self-centered. And I don't mean that. It's not like I'm throwing shade on you. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that to say that you guys, the sign Aries is concerned with the self. So some of you may be a bit selfish, maybe a little headstrong in relationships. And if you find that that is what's preventing you from having the relationship that you want, maybe it's time to start releasing that. Or maybe it is the time to release that. But regardless, Aries, I feel like this full moon is going to ask you to relinquish something. It may be bad habits. It may be control. It may be power. But know that it's for the benefit of the relationship. Whatever you're releasing is nothing that you need to hold on to because, again, it's not allowing you to have the relationship that you truly want. Okay? For others, particularly in the business sense, you may want to look over your contracts, or maybe you're in negotiation stages right now. There's some things that you may want to take out of the contract, that you may want to relinquish, because it just doesn't work well enough for the partnership or the endeavor, okay? Regardless, to sum it all up, Aries, I feel like you guys are definitely working on relinquishing, releasing, getting rid of whatever doesn't serve you in your relationship so that you can truly have the relationship that you want. All right. All right, cool. So that was Aries. Next up, we've got Taurus. All right, Taurus rising. So for you, this full moon in Libra is going down in your 6th house of work and health. Now, if we're talking about relationships, the 6th house covers co-workers. It covers anyone that you provide service to, typically on a regular basis. So customers, clients, of course, if we're talking in a work setting. So being of service to others versus being of service to yourself. Now, you guys can be a very hardworking sign. You guys are like the bull, right? You guys can really build foundations, work hard, and build something of value. Now, are you putting that energy toward yourself and your own development, or are you sort of giving that energy away to everyone else? That is how this full moon is going to affect you. And the emotions that go along with it are going to come up for you to deal with them as well. This can be a very sobering kind of full moon, because if you've been neglecting yourself, in service to others, this full moon may make you feel very run down, very weary, very tired. Like something may happen that's just going to really spark that within you to be like, yo, I'm tired of this. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm running around doing things for all these other people. Meanwhile, I have X, Y, and Z that I need to do for me, and I haven't been able to do it. You may have an altercation with someone that really brings this up and triggers those emotions within you. Just like I said before, it's all about dealing with them and eradicating them and getting rid of those bad habits that are preventing you from having a good balance between service to yourself as opposed to service to others, okay? So really dive deep into the emotions that go with that and try to strike a healthy balance between the two going forward, okay? So let's pull some cards for you and see what we have here. This is for Taurus rising for the full moon in Libra. Okay. All right, we've got the void. Interesting. All right, Taurus. So I see this playing out in a very sort of specific way. Whoever you've been providing service for is not going to be there anymore. Whether you, God forbid, lose a job or a client or, something along those lines, it's like all that energy that you were putting into someone else, they're not available for you to do that anymore. And so now you're sort of like, well, what do I do? Well, you pour that energy into yourself. That void is going to allow you, it's going to spark that thing in you that's going to remember, hey, I have to take care of me first. I cannot pour from an empty cup. So the void is really important. Losing something is really gaining something else. And that is the basis of Pluto energy. It's death and rebirth. Death is not the end. It just sparks the beginning of rebirth, and the cycle begins all over again, okay? And so for you, Taurus, it's really important to remember that even though you may be losing something at this time, losing a job, losing some sort of activity that you do on a daily basis that you are pouring your energy into, that's actually a good thing. It's a blessing in disguise, because it's allowing you to get back to yourself, and it's allowing you to remember what you love, what you are passionate about, and get excited about it. And in doing so, you're going to bring the focus back to you, which will equalize that service to others versus service to yourself. So it's a really important time and a very important lesson for you to learn at this time. All right. All right. So that was Taurus. Next up, we've got Gemini. All right. So for you, Gemini, this full moon in Libra is going down in your 5th house of romance and children and self-expression. So if we're talking about relationships, the relationships at play are your relationship with your children, and romantic partners or people that you have flings with. So just a quick astrology lesson. The 5th house covers romance. The 7th house covers relationships. 5th house relationships are flings. It's dating. 7th house is commitment. That is long-term commitment, marriage, etc. Okay. So for you, Gemini, this is about your romantic partners. So perhaps if you're single, sort of your dating life. If that doesn't apply, then this may apply to those that have children, your relationship to your children. So this full moon, I said before, is about extremes, right? So on the one hand, you have your friendships and associations, right? That's sort of where your focus is right now because that's where the sun is. The moon is in your 5th house, and that's sort of your relationship with your kids and your romantic partnership. So it's sort of this dichotomy between like your public life and sort of your private life in a sense, okay? And so for some of you, when it comes to these romantic relationships or your relationship with your kids, maybe you are giving too much to them. Perhaps you're losing yourself. You're getting lost in the sauce when it comes to that. And your situation is out of whack. Conversely, it could be that you're not paying enough attention to these things and you're more concerned with friendships and associations and the groups that you're involved in. I'll give you a perfect example, especially if you have kids. Perhaps you are, a professional, right? And you're part of all of these organizations. Let's say you're a lawyer, you're part of the bar association, these different groups, right? But you've got kids at home. How are you balancing that time? And how do you identify? Do you identify as a parent or do you identify as a professional? Like these are the sort of topics, and this is sort of how this full moon is going to play out for you. When it comes to romantic partners, are you someone who's like a serial dater? Are you someone who doesn't take too much seriousness in relationships? Or are you someone who, has a lot of friends and, who doesn't really attach yourself to someone? That's also how this may play out, okay? And of course, all of the emotions that come with that, like going to my previous example between the professional and the parent, right? Maybe issues of abandonment, maybe issues related to success come up, right? Because if you identify more so as a professional than as a parent, perhaps your success and your upward mobility in your career takes precedence over your familial obligations to your children. That may sound kind of harsh, but that may be indeed how this plays out for some people. But of course, I'm using it as an example, but you get what I'm trying to say. It's a dichotomy between the two, and you have to find the balance, a healthy balance between the two. And the emotions that come up are really to get you aware of these imbalances. And any work that you do towards these emotions is going to contribute to that balance, okay? All right. So, Gemini, let's get a card for you for this full moon in Libra. All right. All right, we've got blossoming, okay? And this is a 33, which reduces to a 6. So there's something, the message I'm getting here is about blossoming romances or children that are blossoming, children that are growing up, right? And I feel like your attention is being diverted to that. So rather than thinking about your associations, your friendships, sort of that upward mobility I was talking about before, or being part of a group, it's really time to hone in on your private life. Maybe you have sacrificed a love life for work or for business, or however you identify yourself as, right? If you identify yourself as a professional, if you identify as like a nurse or something like that, or just someone who's really into their job and their career, maybe you've sacrificed your love life for that. And this full moon is gonna help you put that back into balance. Maybe you use work as an excuse to not feel things, right? To not be hurt, to not put yourself out there and get disappointed in love, okay? And when it comes to your kids, they're blossoming, right? They're growing up. They have, needs. Flowers need water. Water is attention and emotion. Perhaps you've been emotionally detached from your kids, and now this full moon is really going to bring that to the forefront of your thoughts and bring up those emotions. So again, you can establish a healthy balance between what you identify as and your relationships, okay? Again, I hope that made sense. All right, so that was Gemini. So now we are up to Cancer. All right, Cancer. So for you, this full moon in Libra is going down in your 4th house of home and domestic affairs. And if we're talking about relationships, this is the relationship with your close family members, particularly parents, grandparents, okay? So this dichotomy for you is really between work and home, sort of like Gemini as well, okay? But this is more so your life purpose, your calling, your vocation versus your home, your family, your lineage, okay? So typically this is like your private life versus your home life. What are you giving more attention to? Where do your emotions lie with respect to these two things? Again, are you all about trying to get ahead in your career and you're neglecting home? Or are you saddled with responsibilities at home that are not allowing you to follow your dreams, to have that career, or even to embark on your life purpose? This full moon is definitely going to illuminate all of that for you and show you where everything is out of balance. Now, if we're talking about home and family, this particular full moon may be very emotional for you because the 4th house is like the seat of all of our emotions, particularly emotions we have from childhood. It's about things like love, acceptance, support, all of those basic emotional needs that we need. It's kind of redundant. Are found in the 4th house. And you guys being a water sign, being very sensitive as it is, this full moon can be very emotional because we're talking about the people that are closest to your parents or your grandparents, okay? And again, whatever emotions come up, deal with them. It's not about changing your parents, right? Especially, very hard to change parents. If you change yourself and how you show up in the relationship with them, that will change the relationship. Same thing at work. Perhaps your work relationships, your relationship to superiors or authority figures, or even to fans, followers, subscribers. If you don't like how things are going, you need to change yourself first as opposed to trying to change them. Change inward and then your outward will follow, okay? All right, Cancer. So let's get a card for you. All right. We've got faith. And look, 3 and 1 make 4. Okay. For some of you, I'm getting this is like having to do with a mother. Okay. Let's look at this. So it may be your relationship to your mother, maybe the responsibilities you have to your mother. It may be emotions that stem from your relationship with your mother that are coming up at this full moon, okay? Which can be very, very sensitive, very emotional, right? But again, it's really about like making those changes within yourself and dealing with the emotions that come up. And remembering what you love, right? Because like I said before, even though there's going to be this harsh energy with the square to Pluto, the trine to Mars and Saturn are sort of going to soften the blow. So perhaps you're going to remember something that you really love to do as a child that will really excite you, right? Perhaps you just will remember a passion project that you had or something related to your career that you're excited about. Maybe you're changing careers and it's now time to focus on you and your needs as opposed to sort of everything going on at home. Like I said, this can be pretty emotional, but if you're able to work through it, I think everyone will benefit. All right. Okay, so that was Cancer. So now we are up to Leo. All right, Leo. So for you, this full moon in Libra is going down in your 3rd house of communication and ideas. The 3rd house also covers your relationship with siblings, extended family members, aunts, uncles, neighbors, community members, all those kind of people. People that are in your immediate vicinity, okay? So this is sort of the people that are close to you versus the people that are at a distance from you, okay? So perhaps you have things in your immediate vicinity. Perhaps you have things going on with siblings or people in your neighborhood or your building, per instance, per chance, for example. And that's in direct opposition to people that are farther away from you. Perhaps you have long distance relationships, people in other countries, maybe other family members that are at a distance from you. That is the dichotomy of this full moon for you. And of course, the relationship and the obligations that come with it. The third house is very much about communication and ideas. So it's not a very emotional house, like as opposed to the fourth house. It's very cerebral, okay? So I don't think that this full moon is going to be particularly emotional for you. I do think it's really going to have you thinking a lot, sort of analyzing your emotions and analyzing your relationships more so than feeling them, okay? And again, it's going to be about transformation, but transformation that you do for yourself, being cognizant of the bad habits that you have, perhaps when it comes to dealing with your siblings or when it comes to dealing with your neighbors that are preventing you from having a really great relationship with them. And again, once you address those things and make the changes, the relationship will be better for it. Okay, so let's get a card for Leo. All right, we've got sovereignty. Okay, this is a 5, which signifies change. So for some of you, I feel like this more so has to do with something in your neighborhood. A lot of you are stepping up perhaps into a leadership position, or there's some more responsibility that you're going to have in your immediate vicinity, in your neighborhood, in your building. Even if it has to do with siblings or extended family members, I think you may have some added responsibilities that are going to require you to step things up a bit and be a lot more independent. Some of you may be moving, perhaps at a distance. Some of you are sort of breaking free from the hierarchy of like your family or of your neighborhood. I get this, a lot of you may be moving away or just have more responsibilities that's sort of pulling you away from the relationship, okay? I feel like this is great for you because I feel like this card came up because many of you have really been sort of lost in the sauce in these particular relationships. It's been all about your siblings or all about your neighborhood, and you sort of neglected yourself. And now this is letting me know that you guys are finally addressing your own needs and standing up for yourself too and making it known. The third house is all about communication. So it's not even just so much about thinking independently or being autonomous in your mind. It's really communicating that to people like, listen, I can't do this for you, or I have to take care of this first. So a lot of you are really going to be exercising your throat chakras. A lot of you are really going to be communicative and really letting people know what you need, what you can do, and what you can't do. So a lot of you are setting boundaries too, healthy boundaries, okay? And again, it may feel out of whack, right? But I feel like you've been living at one extreme, and in order to balance it, you kind of have to be a little extreme in the other direction. So if you feel a bit uncomfortable, I feel like I'm being too harsh, or maybe I'm being too selfish, I guarantee you that you're not. I feel like that's exactly what you need in order to establish equilibrium in these relationships, okay? So really, Leo, it's about doing you and being sovereign and really doing what you need to do for you this full moon in Libra. Okay. All right. So that was Leo. So now we are up to Virgo rising. All right. So for you, Virgo, this full moon in Libra is going down in your second house of money and material possessions. So while this house doesn't necessarily represent a relationship per se, it represents our relationship to things. So our relationship to money, our relationship to assets. It also covers things like our self-esteem, our self-worth, and things that we value. So on the one hand, we have our self-esteem, our own money, all this other stuff. And at the other extreme, where the sun is, we have other people's money, otherwise known as shared resources. We've got other people's feelings, other people's values, okay? So the way that this is playing out for you, Virgo, it's like, okay, perhaps you're paying too much attention to other people's values, other people's money. Perhaps you're sort of lost in the sauce and what others think about you. And your value system may be based on what other people's perceptions of you are. Whereas you may need to focus more on your own value, your own self-worth, your own assets, okay? And this full moon is going to show you where you fall on that scale. Are you thinking more about your own stuff, or are you thinking more about other people's stuff? And again, the emotions that come up with it. If we're talking about money, a lot of times we may be battling things like a lack mentality. If we're talking about self-worth, a lot of times it can be like negative self-talk, low self-esteem. A lot of these repressed emotions, if you haven't dealt with them before, they're definitely going to come up now for you to get rid of them. Also, bad habits when it comes to money. Perhaps you spend too much, or maybe you're too cheap with either your money or other people's money, right? If we're talking about other people's money, perhaps you're married and we're talking about your spouse's income or your spouse's assets. This also covers things like loans, insurance policies, inheritances. Those things are other people's money, right? And so how do you relate to those things? What emotions come up when you think of those things or when you're engaged in those kind of things? Those are the emotions that are going to come up with this full moon. And again, it's about changing yourself and seeing that change reflected back to you in the people that you're dealing with, okay? Again, process what comes up, get rid of what you don't need, and see things change for the better. All right, so let's get a card here for Virgo for this full moon in Libra. All right, okay, we've got the Void. Interesting. All right, so if you are dependent on someone else's money, that money is not coming in. You will not have access to it. You are going to feel the void when it comes to money. Even if we're talking about your own assets, maybe you have an income stream that dries out. Maybe you were expecting some money that's just not going to show up. You're going to have a lack of money, either your own or someone else's, and that void is going to trigger emotions within you that may that directly correlate to how you show up and how you think about and act towards money or yourself or the things that you value. Voids are very important and they're very useful because it's in the absence of things that we realize a lot about ourselves. And again, a lot of emotions may come up, but you've got to work through them. And do your best to sort of process them and get rid of what you don't need. But anything that is lost right now, anything that dries up, anything that doesn't materialize is actually a blessing in disguise. So don't just sit there sulking like, oh, I don't have enough money, I'm broke, or oh, you know, he cut off my credit card, or I didn't get approved for that loan. It's really, whatever's happening is really here to teach you how you value yourself and the things that you have in your life. And if you use that as a teachable moment, if you use it as an opportunity to change those bad habits, when the money does come in, because it will, you're going to be able to handle it a lot better, and you're going to have a much better relationship with yourself and with the things that you value and with other people's things too. Okay? All right. I forgot which card had gotten the Void before, but you and another, and I think it might have been Taurus perhaps, got the same card. And it's basically the same message. All right. All right. So that was Virgo. Next up, we've got Libra. All right, Libra rising. So for you, this full moon is going down in your first house. And I said, you and Aries are the two signs that really have a relationship focus for this full moon. So Aries had the moon in the 7th house. So what was being highlighted was your relationships and commitments. You, Libra, with full moon in Libra going down in your first house of self, is going to illuminate everything about yourself. Okay. So again, the dichotomy is the same. It's me versus we. So perhaps you've been paying too much attention to yourself, or you've been paying too much attention to your relationships. Either way, the full moon is going to illuminate the imbalance, okay, if there is any. Being that the full moon is in your first house, you're going to experience and feel a lot of things pertaining to yourself, perhaps things that you haven't paid attention to before. Maybe you're going to realize how you've been showing up in relationships emotionally. What personal bad habits do you bring into your relationships that are preventing them from being successful? I feel like this full moon is going to put that on Front Street. It's going to shine a huge spotlight on it so that you can change it and you can establish equilibrium, balance, and have the relationship that you truly want, okay? Also, with the trine to Mars, it's really going to be important that you remember your own passions and your own desires. If you've been neglecting yourself, it's really time to get back to yourself in terms of what you love, what you like to do, what you need for yourself, and address those things. All right, so let's get a card for Libra, for this full moon in Libra. Okay. Oh, wait. All right. We've got resilience. Okay. So I feel like a lot of you have been shouldering a lot of responsibility, or you've just been holding on to a lot of stuff. Perhaps you guys have been through a particularly difficult season in life, right? Personally, may have nothing to do with your relationships, but personally, you may have gone through a lot of obstacles and struggles, and you've remained very resilient, right? But this woman looks tired, right? She looks tired as fuck. She's holding a lot on her back and she's still moving, but she's hunched over. She looks tired. And I get the sense that that's how you guys are just feeling personally. You've been through a lot. Maybe life has sort of beaten you up a little bit and you're still moving, but not at the pace that you would like. Perhaps everything that you're carrying on your back has to do with obligations related to your partner, related to your spouse, related to your business or your contracts. And now is the time for you to lighten your load and put this down. It's really, I'm getting the sense that you guys may really need, like, and this is going to sound really corny, but like a spa day or something like that. Perhaps not that in particular, but maybe like just time to pamper yourself. You guys love to look good, okay? Looks and aesthetic are definitely a Libra trait, okay? And you guys take that very seriously. And I feel like for some of you, you've kind of let yourself go a little bit. And it's time to really get back to yourself, to freshen up, okay? You don't want to look or feel like what you've been through. So now is the time to really focus on you. It's the time to feel pretty, to look handsome, to look beautiful. And I feel like that change, that freshening up is also going to freshen up your relationship. It's going to add a breath of fresh air to your relationship because you're showing up feeling better because you look better. Like that's just the essence of Libra. So I feel like for you, Libra, the lesson is take some time for yourself, pamper yourself. I don't know, change your looks, get a haircut, do something that makes you feel good. When you look good, you feel good. And if you do that, your relationships will be good. All right. So that's what I got for you for this full moon. All right. So that was Libra. So now we are up to Scorpio. All right, Scorpio. So for you, this full moon in Libra is going down in your 12th house of solitude, rest, and relaxation. And typically when we have any planets transiting our 12th house, it is a time of rest and relaxation. So this full moon is really about service to yourself, and rest is definitely a service we provide to ourselves, right? As opposed to service that we provide for others, like our job, okay? And so for you, the full moon is shining brightly in your house of rest. So perhaps you've been running ragged. Perhaps you've really been doing the most for everybody else. Perhaps work has been really busy and you haven't really had time to sleep. Maybe your sleep pattern has been off. Maybe you had insomnia. I feel like now is going to be the time to get some rest. It's going to be the time to power down. It's going to be the time to focus on you and your thoughts and your dreams, because dreams are also covered by the 12th house. Are you letting your day-to-day activities and everything that you do on a regular basis, your obligations and stuff, are you sacrificing your dreams for that? Could be your literal dreams, the dreams that you have when you sleep, or the dreams that you have for yourself in life. You're going to want to really think about this. during this full moon. And again, you can do that by sleeping. You can do that by resting, by recharging your batteries, and just by powering down, okay? This may also involve your spirituality, so your relationship with God, with the universe, with the unknown, as opposed to your earthly relationships, right? The relationships that you have with people. Have you been sacrificing that? Have you been sacrificing your relationship with God, with the universe, for your relationship with people? Okay, so this may be a time where you definitely want to meditate, you definitely want to pray, you definitely want to have some quiet time with you, yourself, your higher self, and God, the universe, or whomever you believe in. Okay, but all in all, this full moon may be pretty quiet for you, or at least it should be, because again, you should be getting rest. You should be giving yourself and your soul and your spirit the attention that it needs. Okay, all right, let's get a card for Scorpio for this full moon in Libra. Okay. Love this. We've got balance. You got to have a balance of both. And I love this. Look at, she's got her head in the clouds. She's dreaming. I feel like a lot of you have not been dreaming lately. I feel like you're so concerned with work and everything that you do for others that you haven't really had the time to have proper sleep. So this weekend, because this full moon is going down on a Saturday, this is not the Saturday where you want to go out, where you want to be with everyone, when you really want to rest, meditate, sleep even. Have your head in the clouds and allow yourself to dream, okay? Give yourself that quiet time because you definitely need it. A lot of you have been too busy on the earthly plane, and there may be important messages too that you receive in your sleep. And because you haven't been sleeping well, because your mind has been racing so much that you haven't given yourself the opportunity to really power down, you haven't been able to receive those messages because you're not dreaming. Or perhaps you are not, perhaps you, like, sometimes if you drink a lot, if you do drugs or whatever, it prevents you from actually dreaming, okay? So can anxiety and stress. If any of those things have been going on, you have not been dreaming, you haven't been resting well. This full moon is all about restoring balance by resting, dreaming, and powering down, okay? It's a very nice message for you guys, I think. All right, so that was Scorpio. So next up, we've got Sagittarius. All right, Sagittarius. So for you, this full moon in Libra is going down in your 11th house of friends, associations, goals, and ambitions, okay? So for some, this has to do with your friendships, okay? What's going on in your friendships? How are you showing up in your friendships? Are you do you identify more as being someone's friend or as someone who stands autonomously on their own? Do you only, are you only concerned about the group, or do you allow yourself to stand out from the crowd and express yourself? This may be also group think and group ideals. Are you so committed to a certain ideology because you're part of a group that you're not thinking for yourself and you're not coming up with your own thoughts? That's how this full moon in Libra is going to play out for you. And sometimes we identify as part of a group because it feels safe, it feels accepted, right? You feel accepted. So if you have issues related to not being accepted, to being abandoned, to being neglected, perhaps you find so much comfort in a group setting that it sort of deters you from standing on your own. Standing on your own may not feel comfortable. It may trigger wounds from being abandoned, being neglected, all of those things. Those are some of the emotions that may come up with this full moon for you. For others, this has to do with your ambitions and your goals. Particularly, a lot of times this has to do with your professional goals or your career goals or lifelong goals, right? Like, are you so committed to that you're not willing to sort of just express yourself as you are? Are you so goal-oriented that you sort of forget to express yourself and be creative? Okay, that may also be how this plays out with this full moon. And again, those emotions that come up with that are meant to bring awareness to how you're showing up in these relationships. It's also in order to get rid of some of the bad habits that are preventing you from having great friendships, or even great romantic partners, or even a great relationship with your kids, or even being able to reach for the stars and have, reach all the goals that you want to reach. Okay. So it's about eradicating those bad habits and showing up as your best self. Okay. All right. So let's get a card for Sagittarius for the full moon in Libra. Oops. Okay. All right. We've got beauty. And I love this because you see the outline of this woman's face right here. This is letting me know that a lot of you have not really been expressing yourself. A lot of you have really been caught up in your friendships, in your goals, and you've sort of neglected what your heart truly wants, or expressing your authentic self. There's so much beauty to be found in your individuality, who you are as a person, apart from your associations, apart from your goals, is so beautiful. And the world needs to see that. You need to see that and feel what it's like to be accepted all on your own. And I feel like this full moon is going to show you just that. Now, it's going to be a bit uncomfortable because, again, if you've had issues related to being neglected, being abandoned, you find comfort in being part of a group and identifying with a group. So standing on your own may feel very emotionally jarring, but know that there is beauty in who you are authentically. And no matter what you do, no matter how you express yourself, you're always going to be accepted and loved. Okay? So this is a very important lesson for you, Sagittarius. I feel like at the end of this, if you're able to grapple with these emotions, you're able to process them, I feel like you're going to feel this rebirth in a sense, but this rebirth is going to give way to your authentic self, which is just absolutely gorgeous. Okay. I love this energy for you. That's really beautiful. All right. So that was Sagittarius. So now we are up to Capricorn. All right, Capricorn rising. So for you, this full moon in Libra is going down in your 10th house of career and public life. Now, this is the natural house of Capricorn. So this suits you just fine, okay? This is all about status, your reputation, your career, your public standing. So for you, Capricorn, this is where this full moon is going to shine a light. So perhaps there's things about your career or your life purpose or your path or your vocation that you've sacrificed in order for your home life to thrive. For some of you, maybe family has been a big focus lately. What I'm getting is that for some, perhaps you just had children or you have small children at home that may be preventing you from really going full throttle when it comes to your career. Perhaps there are things about your career you've neglected or looked over because your attention has been so much so on family and the obligations that you have at home, okay? And so this full moon is going to bring your awareness to the imbalance that you may be experiencing here and give you a chance to equalize it. Now, it's going to bring up issues that may be uncomfortable, emotional issues that may be uncomfortable. So for example, like I was just saying before, if you have like small kids at home and you're trying to get back into your career, back into the workforce, there may be feelings of guilt that come along with that, right? Like, oh, I'm choosing my career over my family. And guilt can be a very strong and challenging emotion to work through. But there has to be equilibrium, right? You can't live in extremes. And so confronting that guilt, perhaps transmuting that guilt into something productive, into something geared toward your career, is not only going to make you feel better, but that sense of accomplishment, that positivity is also going to positively affect your relationships at home, right? So that is how the full moon is going to transpire for you. All right, so let's get a card here for Capricorn. The full moon in Libra. Interesting, because Cancer got the same one, faith. And look, what was I talking about? Perhaps you just had kids, right? With this beautiful woman on this card. And 3 and 1 make 4. 4 is the house of home and domestic affairs. Okay. So yes, some of you are looking. So here's the thing. Some of you may have just given birth. Some of you are giving birth soon. So family is like at the forefront of your thoughts and where your attention is. Some of you want to give birth to a new career. Some of you want to give birth to a life purpose. Okay. But regardless, there is this energy of giving birth to something right now, creating something new that's going to require your attention. And if it does require your attention, the emotions that you have to work through are typically guilt, right? Don't feel guilty for trying to birth something new. If it's the opposite, right? Let's say you've got a banging career and you're really moving up the corporate ladder, but you want to have a child. And as a woman, you know that can be very difficult. A lot of times as women, we feel like we have to choose one or the other. But I feel like the message is don't feel guilty for choosing one over the other. It's not forever, number one. And some things are just too important to not give attention to. Babies need a lot of attention. Children, family, building a family, it requires a lot of attention, effort, and energy. And if you have to take some of that effort and energy away from your career to do so, don't feel guilty for it. Do what your heart really desires. Okay? And again, like I was mentioning before in the astrology portion, that trine to Mars is going to spark that within you. Something that you're passionate about and excited about is going to come up. And for some of you, it has to do with giving birth to something new, whether it is a child or a career. But either way, try not to feel too guilty about putting all of your attention in one basket for now. Okay? All right, making our way through these one at a time. So now we are up to Aquarius. All right, Aquarius rising. So for you, this full moon in Libra is going down in your 9th house of higher education and long distance travel. So when we're talking about relationships, we're talking about things that are at a distance from you, people that are at a distance from you. It's also people that may be different from you, people who have different ideologies, different religions, different faiths, different outlooks on life, different spiritual walks. That's one extreme. The other extreme is things that are very homogenous, right? Things that are very much like you, that you are familiar with, that's in your vicinity, okay? So I feel like with this full moon, perhaps you're going to be enlightened with respect to people that are different from you, different faiths, different ideologies, like I mentioned before. How do you show up? How do you interact with these people? Are you accepting of these people and their differences? Or are you someone who puts up a barrier and is like, no, if I'm not comfortable with it, if I don't know what it is, then I don't fucks with it, right? I feel like the full moon is going to show you where you fall on that spectrum. And perhaps you may have an aversion to things that are different from you because in the past you found that, those things, either you had a bad experience with them and you sort of just put them on a blacklist, or, you were hurt by something or someone. When it comes to religion and faith, you may be deeply rooted in something that may cause you to have an aversion to anything that's not like that. It runs the gamut in terms of how this can play out. But regardless, again, this full moon is going to ask you, where do you fall on that spectrum? And to equalize that, it's great to embrace what we already know, but it's also even better to open our minds to new things. And I feel like this full moon is going to get you to do that. It's going to get you to step out of your comfort zone and confront any beliefs or emotions you have about things that may not look, sound, or be like you. Okay? All right. So let's get a card. Oops, one came right out. Nourishment. I like this. This is the number 7, which is sort of like your life path, your spiritual path, okay? There is nourishment to be found in things that are different, It adds to the overall color of your life. It enriches your life in ways that you may not have even realized, or you couldn't even fathom how these things that are different can really enrich your life. So remember that when you encounter something or someone who is different, they can only add to your life, okay? And again, it's going to require you to step outside of your comfort zone, which can be very emotionally jarring. But if you're able to do that, imagine the new relationships that you can gain from that, the new knowledge, experience, and wisdom that you can gain from that. So your message is to be receptive and be open. Look at how she is standing with her arms wide. I don't know where I'm pointing. Wide open here. Be open and receptive to things that are different. It can only enrich your life. Okay. All right. And last but certainly not least, we've got Pisces. Oops. We've got Pisces. All right. So Pisces rising. This full moon in Libra is going down in your 8th house of transformation, intimacy, and shared resources. So much like Virgo, this is all about the things that you value, money, as it relates to yourself and other people. So with the full moon going down in your 8th house of shared resources, this is how you relate to other people's money. How does that make you feel? What emotions does that evoke for you? And how does it compare to your own money, your own assets, even your own values for yourself? Do you give more credence to what other people say and believe about you, or do you completely neglect what they have to say and think only about you and yourself and how you feel about yourself? Okay, that's how this full moon is going to play out for you. And it's going to bring up those emotions in terms of acceptance, right? Because if we're talking about other people's beliefs about us, do we feel like they accept us? Do they support us? Those may be difficult emotions to get through. But ultimately, if you're able to work through them, you can change yourself and see that change reflected back to you in your most intimate partnerships or with people whom you share resources with. Is your self-esteem dependent on other people's opinions of you? That's going to be a very important question that this full moon may ask of you. And again, those emotions are going to run deep. You're already a water sign, a very sensitive water sign. And with this going down in your 8th house, which deals with deeply seated emotions, expect this full moon to be very emotional for you. But again, if you're able to traverse these emotions, your relationships to money, to assets, and to your intimate partnerships can only benefit from it. All right, so let us get a card for Pisces rising. Okay, discernment. Like I said, are you giving more credence to what other people believe about you and the values that they set for you? Or are you more concerned with your own values and your own self-esteem and self-worth? You're going to be asked to be very discerning of that right now, because everyone's opinion is not always valid. You know that saying, all money ain't good money? Sometimes accepting someone else's money or dealing with someone else when it comes to money, it's not the way for you to go. So you really need to be discerning with who you deal with in terms of money, whose ideas and values you take on as your own. You are to be very discerning right now. It's very important, because some of you, especially because Pisces is represented by the fish, some of you get lost in the sauce and you can't necessarily tell what's yours and what someone else's, whether it's emotions, whether it's ideas. It's really time for you to get clear on what's yours and what's not yours, especially when it comes to the emotions regarding money, regarding self-esteem, self-worth, the things that you value. Discern what's yours from everyone else's. And I feel like you're going to learn a lot about yourself, a lot about your relationships, and in turn, you can change those things for the better. All right, my love. So that has been the full astrological breakdown of the full moon in Libra, again, happening on Saturday, April 16th. I sincerely hope and affirm that you guys were able to get at least one important message from this reading that can truly help you at this time. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.